So today we're talking about the handwriting on the wall. Whenever we think of handwriting on the wall, we hear this a lot, right? We hear, hey, the writing's on the wall. What do we think about when we hear the writing's on the wall? Is there ever anything good about the writing being on the wall?
Yeah, there was an old saying that they used to say, well, see, that was the handwriting on the wall, was the things that you knew was going to happen.
Yeah, it's things you see are going to happen. It's usually not something good in your life, right? It's not like, hey, I'm going to get a new job, and this new job is going to pay me 10 times what I make now. I'm not going to say, hey, the writing's on the wall, I'm getting this job. But, someone's about to get laid off, their company's not doing well. Usually you'll say the writing's on the wall, things are probably coming to an end. I've been saying that a little bit about my company right now as we're transitioning from being a subsidiary of a Vietnamese company to being more integrated with that company. The writing is on the wall that eventually we will be just purely FPT instead of Cardinal Peak. Good thing or bad thing there, I don't know. But the writing is on the wall. It's something we see in the future, we see it coming, and it's clear, right, that there's something gonna happen. That's what happens to Belshazzar in this episode, in this chapter. In this chapter, Belshazzar sees the writing on the wall. And it's disturbing to him. It's disturbing to him to the point where his knees are knocking. So, you see some guy, it's really, really disturbing to him. It's scaring him. And while it's scaring him, he's panicking. He's trying to figure out what it says. He brings all his wise men. His wise men can't interpret it. Finally, Daniel comes in. Daniel interprets it, and then the end of the Babylonian Empire. So why don't we go ahead and read some of this, and then we'll just kind of continue this conversation. So starting in verse 1, chapter 5. King Belshazzar made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords and drank wine in front of the 1,000. Belshazzar, when he tasted the wine, commanded that the vessels of gold and silver that Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken out of the temple in Jerusalem be brought, and that the king and his lords, his wives, his concubines might drink from them. They brought in the golden vessels that had been taken out of the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his lords, his wives, his concubines, drank from them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver and bronze and iron and wood and stone. So every time I've ever seen, like in Sunday school and things, you'll see people put pictures up of certain things like this. The pictures I've always seen from this have been, there's a table and a few people and a handwriting with a chandelier or something behind it. That's the picture I've always had. I've always had this picture of it being a small group of people. 1,000 people is not a small group of people. This is a big banquet. Now, what's happening in Babylon right now? It's not really as peaceful and serene as what this banquet would depict it to be. Cyrus, from the Medes and Persians, he's already defeated the Babylonian army at Opis. This is a few days before this. And then Sippar surrendered without a fight. They just said, you guys are stronger than us, take us over. Belshazzar's dad, Nabonidus, was the co-regent with Belshazzar. So the text here says that Nebuchadnezzar is his father. You can think of that as it's his ancestor. That other guy, Nabonidus, apparently had married Nebuchadnezzar's daughter. And so this would have been one of Nebuchadnezzar's descendants. And just like we think of our fathers before us, they think of their fathers before them as well. So Nebuchadnezzar is his father in the sense that he is of the line of Nebuchadnezzar. So Nabonidus has already fled. He sees what's going on. He heads out. He goes to his other temple or his other palace. He's out of the way. So Belshazzar is left alone in Babylon. Cyrus is coming to Babylon. In fact, at this point, probably has already surrounded the city. So what is Belshazzar's response to that? Throw a party. Isn't that an interesting response to having a great nation and great powerful army surrounding your city? I'm not going to defend myself, I'm just going to party. Maybe he thought his city walls were great. They were. Walls were tall. They were. They had lots of provisions for a great siege. They did. So maybe he felt that this really wasn't an urgent situation yet, that they could withstand for a while and then just go squash the Medes and Persians when they felt like it. But so he throws this party. And in this party, he's got 1,000 people plus his wives and concubines. So this is 10 times this size of room. It's a really big party, big room. And while they're doing this, they take the gold and silver goblets that Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple, and they use them. And they use them for this party to celebrate and praise their gods of gold and silver and bronze and iron and wood and stone. Have we seen gold, bronze, or gold, silver, bronze, and iron elsewhere in this book? The statue, yeah. These were, the most precious, and further down, you kind of see the same thing here. They're praising their gods of gold and silver and bronze, as well as wood and stone. Most of the idols would have been made of wood and stone and then overlaid with these other elements. So you can kind of see this playing out right now. They've been drinking wine, they get a little bit drunk. He says, hey, check this out, let's go get these goblets. And he takes these goblets and starts using these sacred goblets from the temple and desecrates them by using them in worship to their idols. Okay, so while they're doing this, we'll go to verse 5. Immediately, the fingers from a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster wall of the king's palace, opposite the lampstand. As the king saw it, the hand as it wrote. Then the king's color changed, and his thoughts alarmed him. His limbs gave way, his knees knocked together. The king called loudly to bring in the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers. The king declared to the wise men of Babylon, whoever reads this writing and shows me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around his neck and shall be the third ruler in all the kingdom. All the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or make known to the king its interpretation. Then King Belshazzar was greatly alarmed, and his color changed, and his lords were perplexed. So now you see the hand, okay? This hand comes in, writes on the plaster on the wall. While I was doing my research for this, I actually found some interesting stuff. Crosswalk Christian or something like that. We found Belshazzar's palace. And we know that he had in there a room that was about 175 by 55. So very big room, but definitely capable of holding this number of people. It was his throne room. And his throne room had a couple of the walls were blue enamel brick, and then other walls were plaster. So it would have been one of these plaster walls that this was likely written in that very room. That room is not too far from the ziggurat that was likely the Tower of Babel. Very interesting thing to see in pictures. Saddam Hussein had a palace right there too. It's kind of neat. So this hand comes out and it starts writing on the wall. And it writes some words, and Belshazzar seems to have a pretty normal reaction to this. If we were in here right now and back there, or I guess on any of these walls, we saw a hand start writing, what would our reaction be? Would we look at that and say, wow, that's really cool? Or would we be maybe a little scared? I know I would look at that and say, well, this isn't normal. This is way beyond what I can control. I'd be a little afraid of that. Probably more than a little afraid of it, right? In the text here, you can see his limbs gave way and his knees knocked together. That's some nerves right there. My knees knocked together one time in my life, and I was bowling, and the first time I had the first 11 strikes in a game in league. I was so nervous for that last ball that as I was standing there, my knees were literally shaking. That's how nervous Belshazzar is right now. He is so nervous that he can't really hold himself in place. He's like shaking, he's nervous. His color left him. We might say he became white as a ghost. Like, this is a guy who's really stressed out over what's happening, and I think rightfully so. So what does he do? He calls together all of his enchanters, his astrologers, his everybody his wise men, and says, okay, anyone who can read this writing and tell me what it means, I'll give you a purple robe, I'll give you a gold chain, and you'll become the third ruler of this nation. So you'd be ruling with Nabonidus and Belshazzar, and then you're third. That's a pretty big position. All you got to do is tell me what this says. Now, it must not have been written in Aramaic, because if it's written in Aramaic, I think any of them could have read it. So I don't know what language it was really written in, but it was clearly a message that they could not understand and they couldn't read it. Huh? Cursive? That would be today. There's a lot of commotion now in this banquet hall. Think about what that must have been like. Just a few minutes before, everybody's having a great time. They're being merry. You can probably imagine there's music being played. There's probably some dancing. There's maybe, other entertainers in this room. Like, it's a big festive environment. And now all of a sudden it's not festive, and you probably hear some commotion about people, talking about this hand and maybe causing a stir. Well, we know they're causing a bit of a stir, and the atmosphere has definitely changed. Okay, so in verse 10, the queen, because of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet hall, and the queen declared, "O king, live forever. Let not your thoughts alarm you or your color change. There is a man in your kingdom in whom the spirit of the holy gods. In the days of your father, in light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father the king, made him chief of the magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and astrologers. Because an excellent spirit, knowledge, and understanding to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve problems were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show you the interpretation." So, because of all the commotion happening now in the room, the queen comes in. This is probably his mother or maybe his grandmother. Walks in and says, "What's going on?" And don't be alarmed. There's this guy in the kingdom. His name is Daniel. Nebuchadnezzar brought him to a very high position in the kingdom because he was very talented in this type of interpretation. This is another one of those things in the Bible that never really occurred to me until I read this. I always picture the book of Daniel being Daniel from about the age of 14 or 15 to middle age, right? My age or a little younger than me. Why wouldn't Daniel have been key in the government at this point? Remember during Nebuchadnezzar's time, Daniel was basically second in command. He was Nebuchadnezzar's right-hand man. He's not anymore. Why would that be? Well, maybe Nebuchadnezzar forgot him, but Nebuchadnezzar's been dead now for a number of years, probably 10 or 12 years, 15 years. If Nebuchadnezzar's dead, and we're now at the point where the Babylonians are going to be conquered, how old do you think Daniel is now? Cyrus is the guy who let the Jews go rebuild the temple. Cyrus is the one that conquered Babylon. The Babylonian Empire was predicted to last 70 years. If Daniel was 14 when he was taken into Babylonian captivity, he'd be between 80 and 84 years old now. I never thought of that until I read this. Daniel likely is retired. He's no longer in service to the kingdom. He's too old. He's an old man. Never thought of that before. That actually plays in the next lesson too. The lion's den. All the pictures you ever see of Daniel in lion's den, how old is he? He's a young man, maybe 20s. That happened after this. Daniel would have been in his 80s when he was in the lion's den. I never thought of that either. I never realized that Daniel was so old when some of these things happened. All right, so the Queen Mother reminds Belshazzar, hey, there's a guy in the kingdom, his name's Daniel, his Babylonian name is Belshazzar, and he can do this for you, he can interpret this dream. Okay, so verse 13. Then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king answered and said to Daniel, "Are you that Daniel of the exiles of Judah, whom the king my father brought from Judah? I have heard of you that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom are found in you. Now the wise men, the enchanters, have been brought in before me to read this writing and make known to me its interpretation, but they could not show the interpretation of the matter. But I have heard that you can give interpretations and solve problems. Now if you can read the writing and make known to me its interpretation, you shall be clothed in purple and have a chain of gold around your neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom." So he makes that same proposition to Daniel now that he made to the wise men. If you can read this, you're third in the kingdom, and you'll be clothed in royal clothes and purple, and you're going to have a gold chain around your neck, and you're third ruler. So clearly he's expecting an answer to this question. Verse 17, then Daniel answered and said before the king, "Let your gifts be for yourself, and give your rewards to another. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king and make known to him the interpretation. O king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father kingship and greatness and glory and majesty. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all peoples, nations, languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would, he killed, but whom he would, he kept alive. Whom he would, he raised up, and whom he would, he humbled. But when his heart was lifted up, and his spirit was hardened, so that he dealt proudly, he was brought down from his kingly throne, and his glory was taken from him. And he was driven among the children of mankind, and his mind was made like like that of a beast, and his dwelling with the wild donkeys. He was fed grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, until he knew that the Most High God, who rules the kingdom of mankind, and sets over him who he will. So Daniel tells the king, I can read this for you. And then he reminds him of the plight Nebuchadnezzar had when he got a little bit too big for his britches. Remember, this was just last chapter, right? Nebuchadnezzar has this great dream, the tree is chopped down, the tree is him, and then a year later, his mind leaves him. He has the mind of an animal, and he lives wild like an animal for some period of time. He's reminded that God gives kingdoms or builds kingdoms, and he tears kingdoms down. That God puts rulers in those kingdoms and takes those rulers and moves them out of those kingdoms. But Daniel seems to still be pretty humble. Let your gifts be for yourself and give your rewards to another. Daniel said, I'll read it for you, but I don't need anything to read it. I'll just read it and tell you what it says, and then you can give whatever you're going to give to me, give it to someone else, because I don't want it. Okay, so continuing in verse 22. And you, his son Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, though you knew all this, but you have lifted yourself up against the Lord of heaven. So Daniel reminded Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar thought he was the one who gave himself all this stuff. He was knocked down. He was reminded that you're not the one who did this. This was given to you, and you're not the great power, all-powerful being. There's a being more powerful, and that's God. Belshazzar, you should have seen that in Nebuchadnezzar, and you should have heard the stories of that. You should understand that God is the most powerful. You're not. And you're disrespecting God. You are the one you have a high and haughty heart. You're proudful. And because of that, something's going to happen. Okay, so, and you, his son Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, though you knew all of this, but you lifted up yourself against the Lord of heaven. And the vessels of his house have been brought in before you, and you and your lords, your wives, your concubines, have drunk wine from them, and you have praised the gods of gold and silver and gold, bronze and iron, wood and stone, which do not see or hear or know. But the God in whose hands is your breath, and whose are all your ways, you have not honored. So he reminded him, remember what happened to Nebuchadnezzar? You knew about this. You knew what happens when you get too boastful and too prideful. And here, look what you did. You took the temple's sacred artifacts, the goblets and the utensils used to worship God, and you've brought them in here, and you've used them to get drunk, and you've used them to worship your idols and your stone and your false gods. You have not praised the God in whose hand is your breath. So who holds Belshazzar's life in his hands? God. And he's basically thumbing his nose at God, saying, you're nothing. You're just like all the other gods. You don't really do anything. So we're going to worship our gods, and we're going to use your utensils to worship our gods. And he didn't honor God. Is that a lesson for us today? Should we be honoring God above all? we can get knocked down a step or two when we don't, can't we? Okay, so continuing verse 24. Then from his presence the hand was sent, and the writing was inscribed. And this is the writing that was inscribed: Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parson. And this is the interpretation of the matter. Mene, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balance and found wanting. Perez, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then Belshazzar commanded that Daniel was clothed in purple, a chain of gold was put around his neck, and a proclamation was made about him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. That's pretty cool, right? Daniel, after telling Belshazzar, your days are numbered, your kingdom is numbered, and it will fall. You have been weighed, and you've been judged, and you've been found lacking. And your kingdom is about to be destroyed and given to the Medes and Persians. Belshazzar, at this moment, still, I don't think he got it. What did he do? He put a purple robe on Daniel, put a gold chain around his neck, and gave him the power of the third person ruling the kingdom, probably the shortest rule in history. Right? Here, you're the third person in the... Oh, hi, Cyrus. He ruled for, in this case, just a couple of hours before the Medes and Persians went under the wall. They blocked up one of the rivers, walked under the wall into the city, and destroyed the city.
What I find interesting here is that the sacrilege of Belshazzar with the temple artifacts, and then even he's told point blank Daniel, your kingdom will be taken away, and it will be the Medes and Persians. And the thing of it is that even Nebuchadnezzar, and you look at the statue that he had made for himself, it was stated at that point in time is that the kingdom was going to be taken away. And Belteshazzar just didn't get it. He just was not, whether he was drunk at this point in time or sober, it makes no difference. He just didn't get it. And then he turns around and does exactly what Daniel said, do not do. I don't need the purple robe. I don't need the gold chain. I don't need this stuff. And he went ahead and did it anyway. So it seems to me he's an extremely arrogant man. And I think Nebuchadnezzar was too, until he had to spend some time in the wilderness, and then he kind of came to his senses. But this guy didn't get a second chance.
Yeah, Belshazzar definitely was arrogant beyond where probably even Nebuchadnezzar was. Nebuchadnezzar did get a couple times where he was knocked down a little bit. First with his dream of the statue with the different layers. When nobody could do what he demanded, he killed him, or started to kill him, or wanted to kill him. And then Daniel comes in and says, here's your dream, here's your interpretation. And at that moment, Nebuchadnezzar seemed to have calmed down and given praise to God. Praise be to the God of Daniel, and acknowledged that God is almighty, that God is the one who knows everything, even our thoughts and our dreams.
In one sense, I'm surprised that Belteshazzar didn't try to kill Daniel right at that very moment when he said, your kingdom is going to be taken away from you.
Yeah, it certainly would have been a possibility that he would have tried to kill him right then. But he may have also been so distraught over the writing that it may not even come to mind to kill him. It may have just come to mind that, what do I do? And then when the writing said, hey, your kingdom is going to be taken from you, I'm surprised at that point that he still gave the kingdom, the third of the kingdom to Daniel. He would have known the Persians were right outside the gate. So I'm surprised he didn't try to, right at that moment say, okay, let's go take care of these folks. But he didn't. He still must have felt that his kingdom had enough time left in it that having a third of the kingdom or third ruler would have been something of value. Clearly a man who just didn't get it. And then Darius the Mede came in and was about 62 years old. So, a tragic end to the Babylonian Empire. It's strong, it's strong, it's strong, it's gone. Isn't that true about life? How often does life do that too? Things are going great, things are going great, things are going great, it's gone. Right? It happens all the time. It even happened to my dad. My dad had no apparent health conditions. He was doing great. He was working overseas and went to bed one night expecting to get up the next morning and never got up. It happens to all of us. At some point, we all die. Sometimes we know that death is coming. Other times we don't. We could be walking across the street and get hit by a bus. That's kind of what I see here as well, is Belshazzar didn't prepare for what was coming. What Belshazzar did was he lived for now. The Medes and Persians are at the gate. They've already conquered a couple of my cities. So what am I going to do? Let's have a party. Let's have a feast. Live for now. What he should have been doing was humbling himself and preparing for the future. Preparing for that invasion that was inevitably coming. We should be doing something similar, right? Should we be living for now and just everything in the future is just pointless, or should we be planning for the future? Not our future here, but our future eternally.
After Daniel read this, that very night, he died. But I don't think he knew that it was going to come that soon, that things were going to happen that quickly. But if he knew that it was going to happen that quickly, I think he would have maybe acted a little different.
Yeah, he didn't know it was happening that quick. Daniel told him it was coming, but he didn't tell him tonight.
Interesting that it says that he was slain. That, to me, that means that one of the people that he had at the party.
Well, not necessarily one of the people in the party. He was slain by the Medes and the Persians. By the Medes and Persians, by the conquering army. It just means he was killed. There's some interesting things I read about the hand as well. So in ancient times, often they would take the hands of soldiers that they had killed in battle, and they'd take the hands so that they could count how many did you kill, and so they could get casualty numbers for the other side to determine how big the destruction was. And a hand being on the wall could have been symbolic there as well. The Babylonians, when they conquered the Jews, could have felt that, hey, we defeated the God of the Jews. So in a sense, we killed their God. Here's his hand writing on the wall. And it's not a dead hand, it's moving, it's doing things, right? Could have been God in a very real sense saying, you thought you killed me, here I am, I'm alive. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well. All right, let's get into a couple of the questions here. Question 1, why do you think Belshazzar threw a lavish feast while the city was under threat from the Medo-Persian army? And what does that reveal about his character? What do you think? I think there's a few reasons he could have been throwing this party. The fatalist in me says he's throwing the party because tonight we shall eat and drink, for tomorrow we die.
Wouldn't the city have been really super fortified also?
Immensely.
If you were really arrogant, you would think there's no way they're going to get in the city. But they found a way, they found a vulnerability, but it was stupid, actually, that's right.
Through those, through,
But they never thought of that. They thought there's no way they could get defeated.
yeah, Babylon was probably the most fortified city in history. The walls were super thick and super tall. You weren't getting in except through that gate.
Fortified his soldiers also, so
Yeah.
you probably would have thought there's no way they're going to get me here. We thought about it, consciously or subconsciously, you probably didn't feel threatened or against.
Yeah, he didn't feel threatened at all. He said, oh yeah, they're outside the gate. Let them sit there.
After Daniel called him that, in the back of his mind, he probably thought, I'll just destroy the Medes and the Persians.
Yeah. Yeah, let them sit there outside for a while, then I'll just go squash them like a grape. I'm sure that's what he thought too. It could have been, his co-regent fled the city. He could have been celebrating, I'm the only ruler in Babylon now. The other one left. It's just me. This is a great deal. Come on, let's celebrate my rule. It could have been that.
I didn't research this, but how long was he king of Babylon? I did not research that.
I actually have that. Okay, so his dad, Nabonidus, was 556 BC to 539, and then Belshazzar was co-regent with him from 553 to 539. 553, Nabonidus left and went to Arabia, and he lived in Arabia for about 10 years. In that time frame, his son Belshazzar became king and was ruler of Babylon. Then Nabonidus came back to Babylon, and they were co-regents. We saw other times in biblical history where there were co-regents. One of them is in, I'm not going to get the chapters right. You see it in one of the books of Kings and one of the books of Chronicles. It says so-and-so was king at this time and ruled this many years. And then in the other one says they were king at this time and ruled this many years. What happened there was the king, which I can't remember which king it was essentially driven away from I believe it was Israel or Judah, one of the two obviously. But he was driven away, his son became king, and then he came back. And so they were co-regents there for a number of years as well. So it's not uncommon to see this co-regency happen in the ancient days. But it was roughly 553 to 539. 539 obviously being the fall of Babylon. So what do you think this says about his character, that Medes and Persians are sitting there ready to pounce and he has a party? Seems like he's pretty arrogant and maybe a little overconfident to me. I can't imagine any ruler watching an invading army knocking on your door and just looking at him, it's like, yeah, right, whatever. Right? This is kind of like what Russia did with Ukraine. They thought they were just going to walk in and just take it over. Little bit overconfident. I think that's what's going through Belshazzar right now as well. He's just a little bit overconfident. Belshazzar used the holy vessels from God's temple in Jerusalem to praise pagan gods. Why was this act especially defiant and arrogant in God's eyes? Yeah, yeah. God is a jealous God, and He wants us to hold Him first. When Nebuchadnezzar took these elements out of the temple, they weren't just put into the royal kitchen cabinet. They were placed in the temple of Marduk. This would have been a place that Nebuchadnezzar would have held in high esteem and high regard. And so he put these elements there, knowing these are sacred elements, and he put them in a place that he considered to be sacred. And here Belshazzar takes them out of there, and he uses them just as common utensils. Do you use anything holy as common? Absolutely not. What is holy is to remain holy. And Belshazzar just used them as just common utensils. And that's offensive to God. How about we do question number 4? The king's wise men could not read or interpret the writing. How does this echo the events of chapter 2, and what point is being made about human wisdom?
Inferior to God's wisdom.
It's inferior to God's. Keep going.
Just that men's wisdom is, God's wisdom is totally different. What our wisdom is and what we think is, and then Daniel, he always relied on God. He didn't rely on himself for interpreting and doing these things, whether it was in the dreams or the handwriting or the statue, that it was all from God. And he kind of let them know too that it was from God, not from himself.
Yeah, it was all from God. Who has wisdom, really? We have wisdom because God allows us to know certain things. But really, all wisdom comes from God. And whether it be the statue in chapter 2 or the dream in chapter 4 or here, what we see what man knows is limited. Man has some knowledge about things, not about everything, but God can make known the unknown. God knows every single thing. God put everything in place. God is the one who's in control. And even here we see what man thinks they know, they don't know. They looked at this and they couldn't read it. Apparently it was a language that was not known. God knows that language. God knows every language. God put languages in place. God is all powerful. God put the kingdom in place. We see that above in the chapter. God is the one who gave Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom. God humbled Nebuchadnezzar, and God ended the Babylonian Empire. God is the one who's in control here. Another thing that's kind of interesting here is they couldn't read this writing. Well, where were languages confused? Not far from where this actually happened. I thought that was kind of interesting. The Tower of Babel was in Babylon. They knew where it was. It's where languages were confused. And here they are, back again, not able to read a language that was right there. I thought that was kind of an interesting little side note. We see people outside here, so we probably ought to wrap up here soon. Let's do one more question. How about number 6? Daniel reminded Belshazzar of what happened to Nebuchadnezzar and then explained many tekel upharsin. What is the core message of the judgment? What do you think? I think the core message of the judgment is there comes a time where repentance is no longer an option. There is a time where judgment is coming, and when judgment comes, it's going to be final. And in this case, that judgment came that night for Belshazzar. Now, maybe if he had humbled himself, maybe the judgment wouldn't have come there, but we don't know that because he didn't. And he was judged and killed that very night. All right, let's go ahead and close with a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for this day you've given us. Thank you for giving us this time together. Thank you for giving us your servant Daniel and the words that he wrote, inspired by you. Father, please bless us as we go into our worship service today. Please be with each and every one of us and be with Rob as he delivers the message. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen.